The sky above Earth changed one quiet afternoon. It wasn't a typical sunny day, nor was it the usual peaceful night. Instead, something far more unsettling filled the atmosphere. High above, a massive alien ship, shaped like a spear with sleek metallic edges, hovered ominously in the clouds. The ship emitted an eerie hum, sending a ripple of unease across the globe. Everyone watched in silence as it slowly descended, its sheer size dwarfing even the tallest buildings below. On board the ship, the Varix, an elite group of female warriors, prepared to make their presence known. Their leader, Queen Ralthira, stood tall, her golden armor shimmering like the sun as she surveyed the vast planet below. Her piercing violet eyes never wavered from the earth below. The Varix had conquered countless worlds, each with a simple, unwavering belief in their superiority. Their strength was unmatched, and their warriors were legends. As the ship's engines powered down, a single message was transmitted across the globe, a challenge to humanity. "We, the Varix, demand battle." The voice boomed, echoing through every communication device. "Show us your might, or we will forever declare you weak. Defend your home, if you can." The world held its breath. Earth had never known such power. The Varix were warriors who had destroyed entire civilizations with their unmatched skills in combat and their advanced technology. Earth's military forces had faced adversaries before, but never something like this. The government scrambled, unsure of how to respond. Some wanted to negotiate, others wanted to surrender. But one person stood tall and unwavering in her resolve to face the challenge head-on: General Kira Voss. Kira had spent years rising through the ranks of Earth's military, earning the respect of her soldiers and fellow commanders. Her calm, strategic mind had led humanity through multiple crises, but this was unlike anything she had ever faced. The Varix were no ordinary enemy. They were warriors with power, speed, and technology far beyond human understanding. And yet Kira refused to back down. "We may be outmatched, but we are not weak," she said, her voice strong and confident as she addressed the world's leaders. "We are human, and that's what makes us dangerous. We will fight. We will survive." Kira immediately began coordinating Earth's response. Military bases across the world mobilized, soldiers preparing for the unknown. Her first call was to Dr. Adrian Kale, a brilliant scientist and engineer, known for his innovative thinking. He had helped design some of the world's most advanced weapons, but even his inventions had never been tested against an enemy like the Varix. But now, there was no choice but to trust in his genius. "We need to show them what humanity is made of," Kira told Dr. Kale as they worked together, poring over schematics for a new weapon. "We don't have their strength, but we have our minds, our creativity, and our will to fight." Dr. Kale nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. They needed a weapon that could somehow level the playing field, something powerful enough to make the Varix hesitate, something that would show them the true strength of Earth. As Kira and her team worked tirelessly, the world watched in fear and anticipation. The Varix waited, their ship looming ominously in the sky. There were whispers that they had never met a species that could stand against them. The humans had no chance, but Kira knew one thing for sure: they would make sure the Varix would never forget Earth. Humanity's strength wasn't in its size or its power, but in its heart, its resilience, and its unyielding will to survive. The challenge had been thrown. The battle had only just begun. As the Varix ship loomed in the sky, casting a long shadow over the Earth below, the world stood still. Tensions ran high as governments scrambled to respond to the alien threat. World leaders, once confident in their control, were now faced with an overwhelming and terrifying challenge. No one knew what to do. Panic spread in some corners of the world, while others hoped diplomacy might work. But in the midst of the fear, one name stood out: General Kira Voss. She had spent her career training soldiers, studying tactics, and leading military campaigns, but nothing had prepared her for an enemy like the Varix. Yet, Kira was not one to back down. Inside a secure command center, Kira stood before a massive screen that displayed the alien ship hovering above Earth. The image was as awe-inspiring as it was terrifying. The Variks were not here to negotiate. They had come for battle, and they demanded that humanity face them or be branded weak forever. But Kira was resolute. She refused to let fear take control. "Prepare for war," Kira commanded, her voice steady and calm. "We won't be intimidated." Her team of advisors and commanders sprang into action, coordinating military responses across the globe. Thousands of soldiers readied themselves for the unknown. Fighter jets, ground troops, and naval forces were placed on high alert. But Kira knew that brute force alone wouldn't be enough. They needed something more, something to surprise the Variks. They needed to make them believe that humanity could stand toe-to-toe with the fiercest warriors in the galaxy. The Variks may have had superior technology and physical strength, but humanity had something else: its resourcefulness and its ingenuity. It wasn't just the size of their army that mattered. It was how they fought together, how they could adapt and learn quickly. The Variks had underestimated humans, assuming they were weak, primitive. Kira would show them how wrong they were. She called Dr. Adrian Kale, the brilliant scientist who had designed many of Earth's most advanced weapons. He had been working on a secret project, something that could potentially change the course of the battle. Kira needed him now more than ever. "Adrian," Kira said when he answered, "I need you to activate the prototype. It's time we show the Variks what humanity is capable of." Dr. Kale hesitated for a moment, knowing the risks involved, but then agreed without hesitation. "Understood, General. I'll have it ready in hours." Back in the command center, Kira's military team worked tirelessly, simulating various battle scenarios. They couldn't rely on luck. Every soldier had to be prepared for what was coming. Training exercises were run repeatedly, refining tactics to take down the Variks. If humanity was going to win, they had to be prepared for the worst. Meanwhile, on the streets of major cities around the world, panic slowly turned into determination. People lined up to donate resources to the cause, with civilians volunteering to work in medical units, supply chains, and command centers. The world had united in a way it never had before. The Variks had made one huge mistake. They had underestimated the power of humanity's unity. As days passed, Kira received reports from around the world. The military was ready. Dr. Kale's prototype weapon, a powerful electromagnetic pulse cannon capable of disabling the Variks' advanced energy shields, was in place and ready for use. It was humanity's best shot. The device was a result of years of research, a mix of human engineering and alien technology reverse-engineered from the first alien encounters. The challenge was clear. The Variks would not back down, and neither would humanity. The time for talk was over. Kira gave her final orders as the countdown to battle began. Earth was preparing for the hardest fight of its existence, but General Kira Voss knew one thing for sure: if humanity fought with everything they had, they could make the Variks understand what it meant to challenge Earth. The Variks had demanded battle, and now humanity was ready to answer with everything it had. The world was united, its greatest weapon not just in its technology, but in its people, determined, resilient, and ready to fight. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and Kira had no intention of letting her world fall without a fight. The day of the battle finally arrived. The sky, once clear and bright, was now marred by the presence of the Varik ship, still hovering ominously over Earth. The massive alien vessel was visible from every corner of the globe, casting a long, unnatural shadow across entire cities. Below, people held their breath in anticipation, hoping for a peaceful resolution, but knowing deep down that no such thing would come. General Kira Voss stood at the front of the military command center, her face a mask of calm determination. She could feel the weight of responsibility resting on her shoulders, but there was no time for fear or doubt. The world was watching. The Variks had made their demand clear: battle or be destroyed. Humanity had no choice but to face them head-on. The first encounter was set to take place in a barren stretch of land, far away from major cities. The location was chosen to ensure that no matter the outcome, civilian lives would be spared. As the countdown to battle began, the tension was palpable. Soldiers stood at attention, weapons in hand, while technicians and strategists worked behind the scenes to ensure that everything was in place. The ground trembled as the Varix warship began its descent, slowly landing on the battlefield. Its dark, angular hull reflected the harsh sunlight, casting an intimidating shadow over the terrain. It was a massive sight, too large to be ignored, too powerful to be underestimated. From the ship's open hatchway, several Varix warriors emerged, each one clad in battle armor that glinted like polished steel. Their leader, Queen Ralthira, stood at the forefront, her posture regal and imposing. The other warriors followed in formation, each one radiating strength and confidence. The Varix warriors were unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. They were tall, muscular, and moved with a precision that was both alien and mesmerizing. Each step they took seemed calculated, as if they were preparing for something far greater than the moment itself. Queen Ralthira's eyes scanned the human forces before her, her expression cold and unyielding. She spoke, her voice booming through the air with an authority that could not be ignored. "Humans," she declared, "you stand before the might of the Varix. Show us your strength, or face your extinction." Her words hung in the air like a challenge, daring humanity to respond. The alien warriors behind her stood silently, weapons ready, eyes fixed on their human opponents. General Kira Voss stepped forward, her own soldiers following her lead. They didn't have the same physical prowess as the Varix, but they had something else. Something the Varix had yet to understand. Humanity's strength lay not in raw power, but in the ability to adapt, to think on their feet, and to fight together as one. "We will fight," Kira said, her voice unwavering, "and we will not back down." As the Varix advanced, Earth's soldiers took their positions. Fighter jets roared overhead, circling the battlefield, while ground forces took up defensive positions. Kira had ordered the use of high-tech shields and weaponry, hoping to give her soldiers a fighting chance. But even with their preparation, she knew the odds were stacked against them. The Varix were seasoned warriors, and their technology was far beyond anything humanity had developed. Still, Kira believed in her people. They had faced impossible odds before and had come out victorious. This time would be no different. The battle began with a sudden clash. The Varix charged, their energy blades flashing in the sunlight as they swept through the human ranks. Their speed and precision were unlike anything the humans had expected. But humanity fought back with determination. Soldiers fired their weapons, aiming for weak points in the Varix's armor. Tactical teams worked together, setting traps and using their environment to their advantage. For every Varix warrior that fell, another seemed to take their place. But humanity's resolve only grew stronger. Kira moved through the battlefield, coordinating her forces with a calm efficiency that earned her the admiration of every soldier under her command. She knew this was just the beginning, but it was a beginning that had the potential to change the course of history. The Varix were not invincible. They had underestimated humanity, believing them to be an easy target. But as the first wave of the battle raged on, the Varix were starting to realize that humanity was not a force to be trifled with. The fight had only just begun, and it was clear that the Varix would have to face far more than they had ever bargained for. The battle raged on, the landscape a blur of flashing lights and the deafening sound of clashing forces. The Varix warriors fought with precision and power, each strike from their energy blades, cutting through Earth's defenses like a hot knife through butter. Despite their overwhelming strength, humanity refused to yield. General Kira Voss watched from her command post, her heart pounding with determination. She had prepared her soldiers for this moment, but even she knew that the battle's outcome was uncertain. The Varix were relentless. Kira's eyes were fixed on the field, where the first wave of humanity's forces was struggling to hold their ground. Earth's military had been designed to protect the planet from threats. Just not a threat like this. The Variks were warriors born for combat, while humanity was still learning how to fight on this level. But it wasn't just about strength. It was about what humanity was willing to do in the face of destruction. Despite the chaos unfolding, there was a spark of hope. Dr. Adrian Kell's weapon, the electromagnetic pulse cannon, had been set up and was now ready for use. It was humanity's best chance at shifting the balance. The cannon had the potential to disable the Variks' advanced technology, rendering their shields and weapons useless. Kira knew that this was the moment. She gave the order. "Activate the pulse cannon," Kira commanded, her voice firm and clear. Now, with a loud hum, the pulse cannon powered up. For a moment, everything seemed to pause. The Variks, too, seemed to recognize the shift in the air. Then, in an instant, the cannon fired. A massive wave of electromagnetic energy surged through the battlefield, blasting out in every direction. For a brief second, the air crackled with static, and then silence. The Variks warriors halted, stunned by the sudden loss of their advanced technology. Their shields flickered and then died. Their energy weapons sputtered out of existence, leaving them defenseless. The human forces, who had been struggling to maintain their position, seized the opportunity. With renewed vigor, they pressed forward, taking advantage of the Variks' vulnerability. The Variks were not used to being on the defensive. Queen Ralthira, who had been watching the battle unfold from the backlines, now realized that the tables had turned. She had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now, it seemed, the humans had found their strength. Her warriors, once full of confidence, were now scrambling to adjust, their weapons and armor useless without the technology that had made them so powerful. Kiera, still at the command post, watched as her soldiers began to push the Variks back. For the first time since the battle had begun, she felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't over yet, but the tide was turning. Humanity had shown the Variks that they could adapt, that they could fight back even when the odds were against them. But Kiera knew this wasn't the end. The Variks would regroup and adapt, just as humanity had. The real fight was just beginning. The pulse cannon had bought Earth some time, but Kiera couldn't afford to be complacent. She knew the Variks would be back with a vengeance. On the battlefield, the human forces were slowly gaining ground. Soldiers fought with everything they had, their determination fueling each strike. Tactical teams worked together seamlessly, using the terrain to their advantage. The Variks were relentless, but the humans were proving just as tenacious. General Kira Voss moved among her troops, offering encouragement, giving orders, and keeping the morale high. She was more than just a leader. She was a symbol of humanity's refusal to give up, no matter how difficult the odds. As the first wave of the battle began to wind down, Kira knew they couldn't afford to relax. The Variks would regroup, and when they did, they would come back stronger. But for now, humanity had scored a crucial victory, and Kira would make sure it was one the Variks would never forget. The balance of power had shifted. Earth had taken the first step toward showing the Variks that they had underestimated humanity's strength. And now, there was no turning back. The momentum had shifted, but General Kira Voss knew better than to celebrate too soon. The battle had only begun, and the Variks were not the type to take defeat lightly. The human forces had gained a crucial advantage when the electromagnetic pulse cannon disabled the alien warriors' advanced technology, but Kira knew the Variks would quickly adapt. It was only a matter of time before they retaliated with everything they had. Kira stood in the heart of the command center, watching the holographic displays of the battlefield. The screen flickered as new data came in. Human soldiers were pushing the Variks back, but the alien forces were regrouping. The Variks had already begun calling in reinforcements. Kira's eyes narrowed. She could already see it. The Variks were planning a counterattack. "Prepare for a full-scale assault," Kira ordered her commanders. "They won't let this slide." Dr. Adrian Kell, who had been monitoring the pulse cannon's effects, turned to Kiera with a look of concern. The pulse cannon bought us some time, but it wasn't enough to completely disable their fleet. The Variks will figure out how to repair their tech. We need to act fast. Kiera nodded grimly. She had expected this. The Variks were too advanced, too strategic, to remain vulnerable for long. Earth's forces had to take advantage of this window before the Variks came back stronger. Kiera gave the signal, and the battle intensified once more. On the ground, human forces rushed into action. Soldiers who had once been hesitant and unsure were now full of energy and focus. They understood that this was their moment. Humanity had been given a rare chance to strike back at the invaders. Fighter jets soared above the battlefield, launching missiles at the advancing Varik ships. The ground forces, with the help of specialized equipment, aimed to hold their positions, determined not to give an inch. But just as quickly as humanity had gained an upper hand, the Variks responded with terrifying precision. Out of nowhere, massive explosions tore through the human lines, sending soldiers scrambling for cover. The Variks had adapted faster than Kiera had anticipated. Their warriors, no longer reliant on their energy weapons, had returned to hand-to-hand combat with brutal efficiency. With their superior strength and fighting skills, they cut through humanity's defenses like a blade through paper. The air was thick with dust and smoke as the Variks advanced. General Kiera could feel the pressure mounting. The Variks had switched tactics. No longer relying on their technology, they were now using their physical prowess to overwhelm Earth's forces. The alien warriors moved like a wave of unstoppable force, their bodies towering over the humans as they charged forward, ready to crush everything in their path. Kiera could see the impact of the counterattack in real time. Her soldiers were starting to fall back, their lines faltering under the Variks' onslaught. The human forces had trained for combat, but this was different. The Variks were relentless, and their warriors showed no mercy. The situation was rapidly becoming dire. "Hold the line," Kiera shouted over the comms. She couldn't afford to let her troops lose faith now. "Do not give up. Humanity is stronger than this." But as she spoke those words, Kiera knew the odds were growing slimmer. She could feel the pressure building, knowing that Earth's resources were limited, and the Variks seemed to have endless numbers. If they didn't find a way to turn the tide once again, the battle would be lost. Dr. Kell's voice broke through the chaos. "General, we have one more trick up our sleeve. The backup system for the pulse cannon. If we activate it now, we can cause a much larger surge. It'll take down the remaining tech for good." Kiera's heart skipped a beat. It was a risky move. This kind of surge could damage Earth's own equipment too. But it was their only chance to strike a decisive blow. The Variks were closing in fast, and time was running out. Kiera's decision was clear. "Do it," she said firmly. "We have no choice. Activate it now." With a final glance at the battlefield, Kiera prepared herself for the blast. The future of humanity rested on this moment. If the pulse cannon worked, it could neutralize the Variks' tech completely. But there was no guarantee. The ground shook once more as the backup system powered up. This time, the energy wave was far stronger. Kiera held her breath, waiting for the inevitable. Would this gamble be enough to turn the tide once more, or would humanity's strength finally be overwhelmed by the might of the Variks? The answer was coming, and Kiera could only hope that it was a victory. The seconds felt like hours as the electromagnetic surge from Earth's pulse cannon rippled across the battlefield. A deafening hum filled the air, followed by a sudden and intense flash of light. The ground trembled as if the very earth itself was responding to the immense power being unleashed. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. The Variks halted in their tracks, their formidable weapons and shields flickering and then falling silent. The once unstoppable alien warriors were now vulnerable, their strength crippled by the pulse. General Kiera Voss held her breath, her eyes glued to the chaotic scene unfolding before her. This was humanity's last chance to regain control, and she couldn't afford to waste it. The pulse had weakened the Variks, but it wasn't enough to guarantee a victory. Kara knew that the aliens would fight until the very end, and they would adapt quickly to whatever came next. "Push forward," Kara shouted into her comms, her voice cutting through the chaos. "This is it. This is our moment." The human soldiers, having watched their enemies falter, now surged forward with renewed vigor. Tanks rumbled across the battlefield, their weapons targeting the exposed Varix warriors. Fighter jets swooped down, launching precision missiles aimed at the alien craft. The sudden shift in momentum was like a wave crashing against a cliff, each human soldier pressing forward with a ferocity that only desperation could inspire. The ground shook beneath them, but there was no turning back now. On the battlefield, the Varix were scrambling. Their queen, Ralthera, watched as her warriors were overwhelmed by the human forces. The once proud alien soldiers, who had moved with such confidence just moments ago, were now disoriented and vulnerable. The pulse cannon's wave had done its damage, rendering their technology useless and forcing them to rely on their raw physical strength. But even that was beginning to fail as they faced a relentless assault from humanity's most determined soldiers. Ralthera's sharp gaze narrowed. She had not expected this kind of resistance. The humans had not only adapted quickly but were fighting with a courage that no one had anticipated. In her long history as a warrior queen, she had never encountered an enemy that refused to yield, even when the odds were stacked against them. She had underestimated the power of humanity's will to survive. With a fierce growl, Ralthera raised her weapon, rallying what was left of her warriors. They were down, but not out. She knew that their survival depended on taking down the humans before they could gain complete control of the battlefield. But the humans were not about to let up. Led by General Kira Voss, they advanced on the Varix forces, pressing harder with every passing minute. The tanks continued to roll over the terrain, their massive cannons blasting away at any Varix who dared to rise. On foot, soldiers fought hand-to-hand with the alien warriors, using their ingenuity and teamwork to find the weaknesses in their opponent's armor. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, the humans pushed forward, driven by an unshakable belief that this was their world to protect. Kira, now fully in the heart of the battle, couldn't help but feel the weight of it all. Her breath came in short bursts, her mind focused solely on the next move. The Varix were retreating, but she knew they weren't defeated yet. As the leader of humanity's forces, she couldn't afford to falter. Not now, not ever. She had to ensure that this victory wasn't a fluke, that humanity's strength wasn't just a passing moment. The Varix began to retreat, their warriors falling back towards their ships. Queen Ralthera made one last attempt to rally her troops, but the damage was done. Her forces were in disarray, and Earth's military was closing in fast. The pulse cannon had dealt a crushing blow, and now humanity had the momentum. But just as the battle seemed to be turning in their favor, Kira knew the war wasn't over. The Varix might be defeated today, but there were still many questions unanswered. Who else from the stars had heard the Varix call? Was this invasion part of something larger? Kira could feel a weight pressing down on her chest, the knowledge that this victory, though hard-earned, might only be the beginning of something much bigger. Still, today humanity had shown its power, its ability to stand firm against impossible odds and fight back with everything they had. For the first time in history, the Varix knew what it meant to face an enemy that refused to bow. And for Kira, that was a victory in itself. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but one thing was certain: humanity would never back down. The battlefield was quiet now, the sounds of war slowly fading as the dust began to settle. General Kira Voss stood at the edge of the battlefield, her mind racing. The pulse cannon had worked, and the Varix had been forced to retreat, but she knew this was only the beginning. There was no way the aliens would simply give up. Their queen, Ralthera, had been cornered, but Kira had a sinking feeling that the Varix had much more up their sleeves than anyone could have imagined. Kira turned to face Dr. Adrian Kale, who had been working tirelessly to monitor the pulse cannon's effects. His face was tense, his eyes scanning the sky. The Varix might have retreated, but their ships were still in orbit, watching, waiting. "Do you think they'll come back for round two?" Kira asked, her voice heavy with the weight of the question. Adrian didn't look at her. He kept his gaze fixed on the sky, his mind clearly elsewhere. "I don't think we've seen the last of them," he said quietly. "The Varix don't just attack like this without a bigger plan. There's something more happening here, Kira. I can feel it." Kira nodded grimly. She had known it all along. The Varix had been too coordinated, too precise in their attack. This wasn't just about conquering Earth. It was about something much larger. There had to be more at play, and Kira wasn't about to let her guard down just because the Varix had pulled back for now. Across the battlefield, the human soldiers were taking a moment to regroup, tending to the wounded and making sure that their positions were secure. But even as they celebrated this hard-won victory, Kira knew that the real challenge was just beginning. What if this invasion was just the first wave? What if there were even more advanced alien forces waiting to descend on Earth, waiting to finish what the Varix had started? A voice broke through her thoughts. It was Lieutenant Merrick, one of her most trusted officers, standing beside her. "General, we've detected an anomaly. It's coming from one of the Varix ships." Kira turned to face him, her heart skipping a beat. "What kind of anomaly?" "We don't know yet, ma'am. It's like a pulse, but much stronger. Something is happening on their mothership. We need to investigate." Without hesitation, Kira made the decision. "Prepare a team. I want answers, and I want them now. We're not just going to wait and see what they have planned for us." Merrick nodded and moved quickly to gather the team. Kira didn't have time to waste. Every second could bring them closer to understanding what the Varix were truly after. She knew that whatever they found would change the course of this war forever. As Kira and her team approached the outskirts of the Varix mothership, the eerie silence hung in the air. The massive ship, which had once been an imposing symbol of the Varix dominance, now looked strangely still, almost like it was waiting. Kira's heart raced as she led the way up the ramp to the entrance, her boots echoing in the quiet. Inside the mothership, the atmosphere was tense. The usual hum of alien machinery was muted, replaced by a deep, unsettling vibration that seemed to come from the very core of the ship. The team moved cautiously through the narrow hallways, their weapons drawn, every corner a potential threat. They reached the heart of the ship, where a strange energy pulse was emanating from a large chamber. Kira's eyes narrowed as she saw what was inside. The chamber was filled with a swirling, shimmering energy, unlike anything she had ever seen. It pulsed in time with the strange vibrations. Dr. Kale stepped forward, his expression one of awe and fear. This isn't just technology. It's a power source, but it's far more advanced than anything we've ever encountered." Kira stepped closer, her mind racing. "What is it? What does it do?" Kale hesitated before answering. "I'm not sure, but if I'm right, this is what powers the Varix fleet. It's not just an energy source. It's a way to control vast amounts of power, a power that could easily obliterate entire civilizations. And we've only just scratched the surface of what they're capable of." Kira's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a war for Earth's survival. This was a war for the very future of the galaxy. The Varix had far more power than humanity had ever imagined. And now, it seemed like the fight to protect Earth was only the beginning of something much bigger, something that could change everything. "We need to destroy this," Kira said, her voice cold and determined. "This is our only chance to stop them. We can't let them use it to wipe out everything we've fought for." The team nodded in agreement, ready to do whatever it took. They had come this far, but now they had to take the fight to the heart of the Varix power. And whatever they faced next, Kira knew they couldn't afford to fail. The fate of humanity, no, the fate of the galaxy, was on their shoulders. The tension in the air was thick as General Kira Voss and her team prepared for the most dangerous part of their mission. They had infiltrated the Varix mothership, and now they were standing at the heart of the alien power source. The hum of the chamber pulsed around them, its energy growing stronger with every passing second. The strange, shimmering light that filled the room seemed to shimmer like liquid silver, undulating with a force that was almost hypnotic. Kira stood at the front, her hand gripping the weapon tightly, her mind racing. She knew what had to be done: destroy the power source. The fate of Earth depended on it, but she also knew that the Variks would not let them do it without a fight. The Queen Ralthera had already proven how ruthless she could be, and Kira had no doubt that she would send everything she had to protect this weapon. "Do we have everything ready?" Kira asked, her voice calm but full of determination. Dr. Adrian Kale, who had been working with the team to analyze the alien technology, nodded grimly. "We've rigged the explosives to disable the power source, but we need to make sure we're clear when it goes off. This place is going to implode the moment that thing goes up. If we don't get out in time, we're all done for." Kira glanced at the rest of the team. They all looked ready, steely-eyed and determined to see this through. There was no turning back now. With one final nod, Kira gave the order. "Set the charges. We don't have much time." The team worked quickly, moving with practiced precision as they placed the explosive devices around the power source. Every movement had to be perfect. One mistake, and they could all be dead before they even had a chance to escape. As they finished, the hum of the chamber grew louder, vibrating through the walls. The team backed away cautiously, keeping their eyes on the power source, which now seemed to glow brighter than ever. The countdown was about to begin. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the chamber. The doors to the room slammed open, and a flood of Variks warriors poured in. Ralthera, the alien queen, stood at the front, her eyes glowing with fury. She had been waiting for them, and now she was ready to fight to the death to protect her power. "Do you truly believe you can stop us?" Ralthera's voice was a low, menacing growl. "You have no idea what you are dealing with. This power will reshape the galaxy. You cannot destroy it. You cannot defeat us." Kira stood tall, her expression unwavering. "We already have," she said. "This ends now, Ralthera." The Variks queen hissed, raising her weapon. Her warriors flanked her, their alien armor gleaming as they advanced. Kira's team raised their weapons in response, ready to fight to the bitter end. The battle was upon them, and there was no time to waste. With a loud crack, the first of the Variks warriors lunged forward, aiming for Kira. But she was ready. With a swift movement, she dodged, using her agility and training to strike back, knocking the alien soldier off balance. Her team moved as one, holding their ground against the alien onslaught. The air was filled with the sound of weapons firing, the hiss of Variks energy blasts, and the clash of metal. Despite the chaos, Kira's focus never wavered. She kept her eyes on the power source. They needed to destroy it, and they needed to do it now. "Adrian," Kira shouted, "activate the countdown." Dr. Kale was already in position, his hands flying over the controls of the explosive device. His face was set in a mask of concentration as he quickly entered the final sequence. "Almost there," he muttered under his breath. And then, with a loud beep, the countdown began. Kira nodded. "Everyone out now." With the countdown ticking away, the team began to retreat, pushing through the waves of Variks soldiers as they scrambled for the exit. Ralthera screamed in fury as she watched the humans escape, knowing she was losing everything. Her warriors tried to follow, but it was too late. The power source was already destabilizing. The team rushed through the halls of the mothership, the sound of explosions and collapsing walls growing louder behind them. They had moments, just moments, before everything they had fought for came crashing down. The final seconds felt like an eternity, but they made it out. Just as they reached the ship's outer dock, the explosion hit. A blinding light enveloped the mothership, followed by a shockwave that sent the team tumbling to the ground. The ship exploded in a massive, fiery ball of destruction, and Kira watched, breathless, as the Varix mothership disintegrated into nothing. For the first time in what felt like forever, silence fell. But Kira knew this was just the beginning. There would be more battles to fight, more threats to face. But humanity had proven something today. They could face the impossible and win. The shockwave from the destroyed Varix mothership echoed across the barren landscape, sending ripples through the ground as the once imposing alien ship vanished into space dust. The sky, which had been filled with dark, menacing clouds of war, began to clear as the sun broke through the haze, signaling the end of the battle. General Kira Voss stood on the edge of the battlefield, her eyes still fixed on the place where the mothership had once hovered. She had led her team through hell and back, and they had emerged victorious. The Varix queen, Ralthera, had been defeated. The pulse cannon had worked, and humanity had secured its first real victory in a war that had seemed endless. But as the dust settled, Kira knew that the battle was far from over. This victory might have been important, but it was just one chapter in a much larger story. Behind her, Dr. Adrian Kale was scanning the sky, his eyes narrowed. "The mothership is gone, but I don't like the silence," he muttered. "We're not alone. There are still traces of their technology scattered across the planet." Kira turned to face him, her brow furrowed. "You're saying there's more out there?" Adrian nodded. "I'm afraid so. The Varix were just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Their empire spans across several galaxies. If we're lucky, this victory will slow them down, but it won't stop them. And who knows what other threats they've left behind on Earth." Kira took a deep breath. She had expected this, but hearing it out loud still sent a shiver down her spine. Humanity had just learned how to fight back. They had learned the hard way that the universe was filled with dangers they couldn't even imagine. But for the first time, Kira was certain of one thing. They weren't helpless anymore. "Then we prepare," Kira said firmly, her voice unwavering. "We rebuild our forces, we continue the fight, and we make sure that we're ready for whatever comes next." Dr. Kale looked at her, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "And if the Varix return, what then?" Kira's gaze hardened, her resolve clear. "Then we fight. Humanity has proven it can stand its ground, and we'll show them that we don't go down without a fight. We're not afraid anymore." The silence of the aftermath was broken as the first of the rescue ships arrived, descending from the sky like birds of prey. Soldiers and civilians alike began to emerge from their hiding spots, cautiously stepping back into the open. The human forces had suffered losses, but they had survived. They were stronger now, unified by the knowledge that they had successfully resisted the Varix, and survived to tell the tale. Kira's team, battered but not broken, gathered around her. Adrian Kale stood beside her, and Lieutenant Merrick, the steadfast officer, was already organizing the survivors. The battle had been brutal, but it had bonded them in ways they hadn't imagined. They were no longer just soldiers and scientists. They were humanity's last line of defense, a force that had stood together against impossible odds and triumphed. "Good job, everyone," Kira said, her voice steady but filled with pride. "We've taken the first step, but this is just the beginning." Lieutenant Merrick nodded. "What's next, General?" Kira looked up at the sky, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Next, we rebuild. We make sure we're prepared for whatever comes after this. But we don't do it alone. This victory belongs to the people of Earth, and we'll unite with the rest of humanity to keep the fight alive." Adrian smiled, though his eyes were tired. "We'll need every scientist and engineer we can get. But if we can continue learning from what we've just seen, we can turn the tide." Kira turned to face them all. "This isn't just about Earth anymore. It's about the whole galaxy. If the Varix can invade us, they can invade anywhere. And if we want to protect the future of every civilization, we'll need to stand together." The sound of the rescue ships landing grew louder as they approached, bringing more survivors, more reinforcements, and more hope. There was work to be done, but the human spirit had been tested and had not broken. Kara knew that there were still dangers out there in the stars, but for the first time in this war, she felt a sense of pride that she hadn't felt before. Humanity had shown its strength. They had stared down the threat of an alien invasion and proven that they weren't just survivors, they were fighters. And that made all the difference. As the team moved toward the ships, ready to board and head back to base, Kara looked one last time at the horizon. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The next chapter would be even harder, and the threats would only grow more dangerous. But one thing was certain: humanity was no longer the underdog. They had earned their place in the stars. And no matter what came next, Kira Voss would be ready to lead them into that fight. In the weeks that followed the destruction of the Varix mothership, Earth began to heal. The world had been battered by war, but the human spirit was resilient. General Kira Voss and her team returned to Earth as heroes, their faces known across the planet for their bravery and determination. The victory against the Varix had united humanity in a way no one had imagined possible. Countries that had once been divided now stood together, their eyes fixed on the stars and the future. But Kira knew that victory was not enough. The Varix were a powerful enemy, but they were just one threat among many. The galaxy was vast, and there were forces out there far beyond anything Earth had encountered. As she sat in her office, looking over reports and strategizing for the next phase, Kira couldn't shake the feeling that the peace they had earned was only temporary. The calm before another storm. Dr. Adrian Kale, now a trusted member of the military leadership, walked into the room, carrying a datapad filled with the latest findings. His face was serious, and Kira could see the worry lines etched into his features. "General, we've discovered something troubling. The Varix may have been part of a larger coalition, an alliance of alien species. We've detected faint signals coming from sectors far beyond our reach. It's possible that more Varix warships are preparing to invade." Kira stood up, her eyes narrowing. "How soon?" Adrian shook his head. "Hard to say. The technology they're using is unlike anything we've encountered. They've mastered stealth, making it difficult to track their movements, but we have to assume they won't be gone long." The weight of the news settled heavily in the room. Kira had known the victory had come at a cost, but this was different. The Varix invasion had been brutal, but it had been only the beginning. "We can't let our guard down. We need to rebuild faster, adapt quicker. If there's an alliance out there, we need to be prepared." Adrian nodded, already on the same page. "I've already begun working with the scientists to reverse engineer their technology. We'll need a bigger fleet, better weapons, and a stronger defense system. This won't be the last time we're tested." Kira clenched her fists. "We'll give them everything we've got." The general's mind raced as she thought about the future. Earth had fought bravely, but to survive, they would need more than just courage. They would need unity, innovation, and strategy. The technology from the Varix mothership had given humanity a huge leap forward, but it wasn't enough to guarantee their safety. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and now humanity was at the center of a war that could span across planets. As the days turned into weeks, the military began to restructure. Former enemies now worked side by side, using the shared knowledge and resources to form a unified defense force. The world's best engineers and scientists joined forces with the military, creating new spacecraft, advanced weaponry, and defensive systems. Every day brought new challenges, but humanity was determined to rise to meet them. Meanwhile, Kira's team had become the cornerstone of the human resistance. Lieutenant Merrick, ever loyal, had been appointed as the head of a new elite strike team, tasked with training soldiers for missions deep behind enemy lines. He led with precision, instilling a sense of discipline and unity among his troops. Dr. Kale, working tirelessly in the labs, had uncovered secrets of the Varix's energy systems and began designing powerful shields that would protect Earth's cities. His passion for the work was unmatched, and with every breakthrough, He felt closer to ensuring that humanity could stand strong in the face of future threats. Kira knew the stakes were high, but she also knew the strength of her people. They had faced the unknown, fought impossible odds, and emerged victorious. Now, as they prepared for what was to come, there was no question in her mind that Earth's greatest weapon wasn't technology. It was their unity and determination. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, Kira stood outside the military command center, gazing at the stars. The sky was clearer than it had been in a long time, and for the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope. The darkness of war had cast a long shadow over Earth, but now the light of a new beginning was rising. She wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. She was fighting to protect the future of humanity. And she would never stop. The legacy of this victory wasn't just in the battles they had won. It was in the strength they had discovered within themselves. The fight for Earth wasn't over. It had only just begun. But Kira Voss knew one thing for sure. Humanity would face whatever came next with unwavering courage. And no matter the cost, they would stand united.